Hello, everybody. Welcome to Trapezal's travel blogging webinar. We are at travel blogging webinar number 10, and I am joined with Will Tang from Going Awesome Places. Um, Will has been blogging since 2012, ever since he quit his consultancy job. He loves adventure and photography, and he also blogs about adventure, luxury, and flat out epic experiences. Um, Will loves storytelling and he's also very fond of writing complete itineraries for cities. All right, guys, just before we start, for those of you who don't know, Tripeasel is a travel platform, and yeah, Tripeasel is a travel platform, and we basically connect travelers with travel bloggers to plan vacations. And once this is done, the itinerary gets passed over to travel agents who bid for these itineraries, and the lowest prices go to the customer. All right, Will, over to you. Go for it, buddy.
All right. Thanks for having me. It's really exciting to do, I guess, my very first seminar. And so when I was approached for different topics for things I could talk about, I thought about kind of my journey as a travel blogger, starting off with someone that literally quit my job to go travel, started travel blogging for fun, started taking it more seriously, and this kind of I progressed. Something that did come up, and I think will for a lot of travel bloggers, is press trips. And so how do press trips works, and really kind of the do's and don'ts of press trips, things that I've learned along the way. I've been doing press trips for about 2 to 3 years now, and so it's been really interesting to go through different types of press trips and figuring out what's the best way to approach press trips when you get accepted into them. So I guess to start off, like, what is a press trip? A press trip is essentially something where you are approached by, or you reach out to a tourism board, or what they call a CVB. Sometimes it could be a brand. Typically, it's with a tourism board. That's been my experience. And these are folks that basically will. There are two types. There are two types of press trips. There's an organized press trip, and there's a self-guided press trip. So an organized press trip is one where a tourism board will actually have many types of fixed itineraries that they put together, and these are trips designed for not only just bloggers but also journalists. It's a fixed itinerary. They take you around typically to a bunch of different places. It's in the span of minimum, it could be a day, it could be a whole week, depending on the size of the press trip. And they take you around to all these different places. You get to decide what you want to write about them. There's typically no specific requirement in terms of what you need to cover. Of course, they're going to evaluate you based on your presence, either on social media, on your blog, and they'll have certain expectations in their own minds of what you're going to be able to produce. And hopefully you'll be able to meet those kind of those things that they're expecting of you. But in general, that's kind of how a press trip works. It's about experiencing new things. They'll want to obviously promote certain places that they have relationships with, whether it's hotels, restaurants, activities, and so on and so forth. That's kind of the organized route. It's on a bus. You're with a lot of people. Or it could be on a van. I'm with my last one. And you're going around, spending a couple days in a specific region, and that's the organized press trip. Now, on the flip side, there's the self-guided press trip. And so I've done a few of these, and these have been great, working with the St. Pete's Tourism Board in Florida, in Buffalo, here just south of Toronto. I'm in Toronto, by the way. And the self-guided press trip is one where, again, you're working typically with a tourism board and talking to them about, hey, I'd really love to come down to your region, have some time out here, and I'd love to explore. So give me some ideas for things I can do, and let me know what you can sponsor for us. And to tee it all up as well, all this, of course, is typically comped, but the level of how much is comped is really dependent on the tourism board. Self-guided is one where you're basically requesting for support from a tourism board. They may decide to put it together for you and give you some ideas. You will also have some ideas of your own that you'll inject and introduce to them. And basically, depending on how it works out, they'll be able to support a large chunk of it, some of it, all of it. and you basically go out on your own, depending on what you have organized, and you go out and do your trip. And so that's a self-guided. And so, of course, there are a lot of pros and cons of each type of trip, as I've done both, and you'll learn soon enough. So I'll start with the organized press trip. So what I love about it is that you don't have to plan anything. The itinerary is set, and in terms of planning and stress around figuring out what to do, like looking at the maps, figuring out the hours, figuring out transportation, all that's taken care of. So the great thing is that you don't have to think too much in that, especially for bloggers. We're just really, really busy. We typically have our own trips planned, and we'll spend a lot of time there. But these type of trips, we don't have a lot planned, and so that's a good thing. Not having to spend too much time figuring all that stuff out. The second thing is that everything is taken care of, usually. So when we're talking about hotels, the transportation, sometimes a flight it's about 50-50 whether the flight's involved, and all the activities, basically it's all inclusive, and so that's a great thing. The third thing is that you get to meet a lot of journalists and other bloggers along the way, and so I'll say that's a good thing because you get to network. And one of the great things that has happened through these press trips is that you make lifelong friends with all the other folks that are on the trip. So it's great for networking, great for opportunities that may come down the road. So for instance, maybe you meet a blogger, you guys become really close, and maybe there's an opportunity that they need to pass up on, but they'll recommend you down the road. And so those type of things are really important. So I'll say that that's actually one of the best things about an organized press trip, is being able to meet these other people from other countries, from other cities that you normally wouldn't meet on your own through a networking event, maybe locally. Of course, there are a lot of downsides to the organized press trip, and it's really about, like I said, you're really herded around in a van or a bus, and so you really don't have a lot of freedom. So the flip side of having everything organized is that you don't really have a choice of what you're going to see. So maybe you're not that into museums, but of course on the itinerary there's going to be a ton of museums. You're just kind of forced to go through it. Maybe you're not a big foodie, and so food's not that big of a deal for you, and you'd rather spend more time somewhere else. You might not have that flexibility. The second thing that I don't like about press trips is that you are dealing with a lot of personalities. While it's great to be able to meet a lot of people, there's just a ton of other people you're going to meet, and for better or worse, you may not like some of these people, and so you have to deal with, being with those people for however many days the press trip is. And the mix of people may not always be what you expect. So a lot of press trips I've been on, I will say that they're mostly journalist focused, and so as a blogger, sometimes it's a bit awkward because journalists kind of have different perceptions of things of bloggers, and that's something that I know a lot of us have to deal with. And so you may not get a warm reception as a blogger. And lastly, it's just because it's organized, you're being herded. It's very rushed. It's very busy. So by the end of the day, you're completely exhausted. There's typically no downtime. So it's just go, go, go. So if you're the kind of person that can handle that, that's good, but it's something to be aware of. When we're talking about self-guided trips, what I love about them is the freedom to do what you want. So, for example, when I went to St. Pete's this year in Florida, I basically looked through St. Pete's and figured out, okay, what I want to see. I planned out based on my 2-3 days there that I could, take it easy. On this day, I wanted to do a lot of beaching here. Another day, I wanted to do the adventure sports. And another day, I could just kind of see the museums and kind of figure my way around there and then have a really great meal. And so that was really up to me. I did it at my own pace. I got to choose what I wanted. It's like one of those choose your own adventure books. And the other part that's good about self-guided is that it's easier, I would say, to do it with a travel companion or with other people. You kind of have the choice because you know exactly what's comped and what's not comped. Some stuff is out of your pocket. You can definitely have other people on board. With tourism board, typically they don't care. With press trips, that's usually not the case. It's usually just your own. Sometimes you can bring somebody else, but I think that's pretty rare, actually. What's bad about self-guided press trips is that there may be more costs you'll have to cover. Depending on kind of the things that they have relationships with. Things like car rental are oftentimes things that they don't cover. Flights as well is something that's rarely covered. Um, Tourism boards are more likely to work with you typically on self-guided trips if you already have a lot of those transportation pieces figured out on your own. And so it helps a lot when you say, oh, I already have plans to come down to your city. Can you help me? That makes the conversation a lot easier with press trips. So why don't we then jump into do's and don'ts. I know that there may be some questions coming in, so I'll definitely be able to answer those as they come in towards the end. Okay, so these are things I've learned. Initially, when I first started doing press trips, I had no idea what to do, how to prepare, what to do during the press trip, what to do post-trip. There are a lot of things to think about, actually, that I realized. And I think these are things that are going to help a lot of you guys when you guys go on your first press trip or first several press trips. So why don't we start with the do's, all the things that you should be thinking about. And the first would be preparation. So you haven't even gone on your press trip. What do you need to think about before going on your press trip? Okay, so preparation. First is obviously packing. I think reading the documents that they send you is pretty important. There are a lot of details in there typically if the tourism board is good about running their press trips. So knowing about what to bring, do you need a swimsuit or do you need certain thing that you'll need for a certain activity? So getting yourself prepared there. I think that goes with the territory as a traveler, just knowing what to pack is important. So I'll just leave it at that. The second thing is social media. Big part of blogging, obviously, social media, whether it's on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, so on and so forth. But one thing you realize, and I talked about this with the organized press trips, is that the schedule's insane. You're going to be running around, going to different places. Your schedule's going to be jam-packed. A lot of times you may not even have signal in terms of being able to use data or access to Wi-Fi, especially if you're going to other countries and you may not have a SIM card. It's insane. And so instead of having the stress on you to, okay, I need to have something out at this time, what I find helps a lot is the schedule. Schedule social media before you head out. While a lot of these messages are going to be a bit canned, like, oh my God, this place is awesome, or you'll have a photo that you pull online to use to kind of share with your audience that you're here and what kind of what the experience is going to be like. I think it's worth it because there have been so many times when I've been caught off guard with not being able to share that I knew that in the back of my mind that I had something scheduled, I had something as a backup to say, to share the experience or to really be able to create social traffic around whatever you may be doing, whether they have a hashtag that they want you to promote or a certain product that you're looking to, or a location that you're looking to share with your readers. Having that scheduled ahead of time is definitely very key. So that's part of the preparation. These are really just high-level messages. You don't have to go too detailed. Images obviously are very key, and to do it on your main social channels, just like I said, in case that you don't have time to post. So social media scheduling is very key and highly recommended by all the bloggers I know that have done press trips. So do yourself a favor and make your life easier. So the next part is then as well keeping track of things like hashtags and handles. I've oftentimes been caught off guard the first few times doing these press trips where you're trying to figure out, okay, I'm in a certain place, what's their handle, or what is their hashtag that they use, or the tourism board, what hashtag should I be using all the time? Obviously, you want to gather that information beforehand. It kind of sucks to be able to have to do that while you're on the go. So for me, I will use things like Evernote, just any note-taking app, or an app like Tags for Likes. If you have the paid app, you can basically keep track of all the hashtags and things that you want to keep track of for you to use on the road, so you can literally copy and paste. Those are useful tools to have. I just use a simple note-taking app. I just copy and paste as I go along, or just to remind myself, okay, so I don't have to go on Twitter, do a search, find it, figure out the hashtags and so on. So that's important. Along the lines of hashtag, I will say that you want to make sure that your content is trackable the entire campaign, because the worst thing is that you'll go on a press trip and you won't be able to track how well you did. And so a tip of mine is to make sure that you have a hashtag that is your own, that you create. So for me, I did a big trip to Peru, and on Instagram right now, I'm running a Going Awesome Peru. Basically, every trip I go on, it's going awesome somewhere. And that's been like my own thing. And so I can go back and using whatever tool you decide to use for tracking, and I'll talk about this post trip, you'll be able to easily pull it up. The problem is that when you start using things all over the place, there's no way to track it. And so either you create your own, which I suggest, or you talk to the tourism board, the company that you're working with, or whatever hashtag they use. And so at least you'll be able to track things at a global level for that hashtag. It's typically good to work with them because they obviously want promotion out of their one hashtag or two. And lastly, for preparation is doing the mental thinking around what content you want to write. I think that's very important because, especially with organized press trips, you're going to be seeing a lot of stuff, and you'll know the itinerary, but a lot of the stuff doesn't matter for you. If you're not a food writer, you won't be thinking too much about the restaurants. Or maybe you will, depending on what you want to do. But really think about the angles and the articles that you want to write, because then when you go into your press trip, you'll have a laser-type focus on what you want to spend time on. So you know if you go to this zip lining adventure that you're going to be spending a lot of time taking photos, taking videos, talking to people, getting all the information that you want, as opposed to maybe you're not interested in museums. You'll go to the museum and kind of just enjoy yourself. Don't take too many photos because you know those photos aren't going to make it. So why bother, kind of thing, right? So spend your time wisely, and the content preparation definitely helps. Okay, so you've done all that. What about when you're on the trip? And when you're on the trip, there's a lot of stuff going on, of course. So there's some things I thought I'd kind of bring up to you guys to really help you on your press trip. One is photography. Photography is going to be key for everyone, whether you're doing it on a camera, you're doing it on a phone, it doesn't really matter. Photography is obviously very key to vlogging. You don't have to be a pro. But there's some things to think about. You really, like with the preparation for content, you know where to focus your time on. And so if there's a place that you go to where you know you'll need photos, take a lot of photos. The worst is coming back on a trip and having to use stock photos or having to use Creative Commons photos because you didn't capture enough. There's a moment that you didn't capture. Maybe it's a picture of the tour guide that was with you. You forgot to take that. It's like shit, right? So make sure you take a lot of photos. There's nothing bad about taking a lot of photos. You can always sift through them and organize them later on. You get that one chance to do it. If you don't do it, you don't take it, you're not going to be able to get it later. Because with press trips, it's always go, go, go. You'll never have an opportunity where like, oh shoot, I forgot to take a photo of that. Let me drive over it and take it later. You won't be able to really do that. And one tip that I think a lot of people forget about is that most of us love the horizontal photos. Horizontal photos typically just work a lot better with your blog. But with the rise of Pinterest, you actually have to start thinking about, okay, do I have enough vertical photo coverage for pins that I want to use for the blog? So always make sure that you take vertical photos now. So make sure that's part of your photo taking process. Next is really just laser type focus. This goes back to the content that you do your preparation on. So focus on things that you are going to be writing about. Discard the rest to make your time a lot easier, so that you're not stressed out the whole time, just like running with your head cut off, kind of doing all that. Just focus on the areas that matter to you. Collect the information, the photography, the experiences, and don't spend time on the other things. Just enjoy the moment for the other things. So spend your time wisely. Collect business cards and contacts and things along the way, and also give business cards. I think that's very important for these trips because you're going to forget that information. Maybe you need to reach out to people afterwards for the article or the piece that you're writing. So to have that information is very important. And to give out cards is always important as well, just again as part of the networking whether it's just other people that are in PR that you meet along the way, journalists, just places, so that they remember to check you out, and so that when you write your post about, this really cool place, that they'll share it on their end. So there's a lot of benefits to kind of sharing your business card. And lastly, this happened to me a couple times, whether it was on my own personal trip or on organized press trips, is that as you're going to different places, you're going to be talking to a lot of people, and there's going to be a lot of information thrown at you. And so it's really hard to figure out on the fly whether some information you're going to be using, whether it's a fact, some statistic, or something like that. You can have your notebook. If you're really good at note-taking with your notebook and taking photos and doing all that stuff, you can do that. I'm not a big fan of that. It's really hard to multitask. And so what I actually do is use my phone, or if you have an audio recorder, is basically once you get into a situation where you're doing an interview essentially with somebody, or you're doing a group tour and there's a lot of stuff being thrown at you, is just to turn on and start recording. Because that's always the backup that you can go to. So if you're doing a recording the entire way through, you can basically, when you're starting to write your article, you can go back to your recording and kind of like fast forward to the part where you need a certain number, or need a certain, interesting fact, that kind of thing. So I've done that for a lot of my trips, and that saved my butt for sure. Okay, so you've gone on your trip, you come back. What do you do post-trip? Because the worst is, especially for a blogger, is to come out of the blog trip flat. Come out of it with, kind of dropping off. You have the experience, but then what next, right? So in order for you to look good in front of wherever you're working with, and kind of to make sure that you make other bloggers look good, this is something I definitely recommend. Post-trip, make sure you start saving those analytics. So there are a lot of different ways to do it, whether it's just going through your own analytics, but especially on Twitter. What I like to use is Tweet Reach. So Tweet Reach is a really good tool to basically figure out your engagement online, on Twitter specifically. So you're going to be using, if Twitter is one of your main channels, you're going to have a lot of activity on it. You're going to have that hashtag that you can track. So you can literally track that hashtag and know exactly, okay, how many people did this reach? Obviously, the bigger the numbers, the better you look in front of the tourism board. But if you miss your window for things like Tweet Reach, or you forget about it, then you're gonna lose. It's gonna be a lot harder to get those numbers. So make sure you start gathering those analytics right away, because those numbers are gonna come in handy. The next part is thanking those people that you met along the way. So whether they're your fellow journalists, fellow bloggers that you meet along the way, all the places that you went to that you got business cards for, just thank them. It's kind of part of the proper blogger etiquette. It just goes a long way. Whether that means anything down the road, doesn't matter. Just make sure you thank the people along the way, because they took their time out of their day to host you. They probably put money, or the money was out of their pocket to spend time with you for the blog trip. So make sure you do that. So along with the analytics, you want to make sure then to do your post-trip wrap-up. That's something that's easy to forget. It may be part of the thank you to the tourism board or whoever you're working with, but I find it's highly, highly effective, and it comes across as extremely professional to basically thank them, let them know how the trip was, tell them about what your plan is. Once you figure out, okay, I'm going to write 3 articles, maybe I'm going to do a couple videos, I'm going to do all the social media promotion post-trip. Let them know what the plan is, so they know what to expect. The worst is for tourism board on the flip side. Think about it. If they spend the time, they spend the money to host you, and you never hear from that person, the blogger, then you're wondering, like, what's going on? Did I just waste all this money on you? And it looks bad on bloggers. They start questioning whether they want to do press trips at all. So you just want to make sure you put your best foot forward, let them know what you're going to be doing, as well let them know about all the cool analytics that they capture, because they want to obviously look good in front of their bosses, whoever they're reporting to. If you have really good numbers to share to really wow them, that's just gonna go a long way in terms of them, having really good perception of you. and just wanting to bring you back. And so that's really how I've really secured relationships with a lot of these tourism boards brands. Is that if you really show that you do good work, they're going to want to work with you again. So a lot more opportunities will start coming your way. And lastly, just with letting tourism board know what you're going to be doing is then making sure that you follow up on it, like that you actually execute on a timely manner. So make sure that the pieces that you promise to be able to do them timely when you promise to do them, and if you're not able to, just let them know. I think it's never, if you get too busy, maybe you're on a round the world trip, or things come up. Just keep people updated. Again, you never wanna be the person that's in the dark and wondering what's going on the flip side of things. So just let them know, and I think that's okay. And for a lot of things, for some articles, it may not make sense to have them posted right away because maybe it's seasonal, maybe it's for a festival that you guys go to, and so does it make sense to post something about that festival after the festival's been over? Does it make sense? And this is a discussion you need to have with the tourism board that you're working with. Does it make sense to post it maybe a month before the festival next year? So you want to think about what makes sense for your tourism board that you work with, and make sure that you communicate that with them and strategize what the best way is, because as a blogger, we have that experience. We want to let them know what's the best way to do things. So a lot of things to go there. Okay, so the last thing I'll go through is about the don'ts, and I don't have too many here, but I thought I'd throw a few your way just to give you some ideas of things that you may not want to do while you're on these press trips. Is one, don't be late or just unprofessional anyway. Like, the way you got to think about this, while these trips are fun, you're going to be doing a lot of amazing things, and you'll meet a lot of cool people, is that it's at the end of the day, you're there for business. You're there as a professional. You're a travel blogger. Treat yourself as a travel journalist, and you want to make sure that you act accordingly. So yeah, just make sure that you're professional the entire way through, and that you're never late. You do things properly, I guess. So make sure you keep that in mind. The second part is bad experiences. So I get that question all the time. What happens if there's something that you did on a press trip, whether it's organized by them or yourself, it was just a really, really bad experience. So typically don't post those as bad experiences off the bat. That's a big no-no, because if you do that without letting the person that you're working with know, that could come back to bite you in the end. I'm all for writing experiences that are obviously real, that they're genuine. These are real experiences that you want to share with your readers. That's very, very important, obviously, as a blogger. But to write highly negative reviews about a place could really damage a business. And so what I recommend is first have that conversation with that place. So maybe it's like you have a really bad diving experience that they're just flat out terrible. You were going to write about them. It's just really, really bad. Have a conversation with the tourism board, with the place that you went to, and just tell them it was a bad experience. I don't want to damage your reputation. I'm just not going to write about it. And typically, they're way in favor of that over you writing a very damaging experience, unless it's under some other circumstance that I can't think of right now. But your best course of action is typically not to post it and just let them know. Usually, they understand, and they would rather you not write it than to have a really damaging post or story. So that's something that's definitely come up. It's kind of it doesn't happen a lot. I'll say out of all the experience I've had with press trips, I've never really had a very bad experience. You kind of just figure out along the way like what you want to focus your story on, and it'll be on something that was amazing, right? And so for the experiences that were okay, you might not talk about them, and I think that's okay. For press trips, it's never really that expectation that you have to write about everything. They know that every single writer, every single blogger has their own angle and niche, and so you'll be focusing on those niches. And the last thing I'll talk about in terms of don'ts is that don't assume that everything is paid for. While a lot of it will be, and I think that's what's great about a lot of these press trips, at the same time, a lot of things may not be covered. Things like tips are things that are often pretty iffy, I'll say, about prep trips. Sometimes they're covered and they'll say that you don't have to worry about things like tips, like things at restaurants, at a hotel. But I think it's just common courtesy, if you realize that tips aren't being covered, that you cover them yourselves. Don't be a jerk. Just do the right thing. So don't assume that everything's paid for. There may be some other instances where something is not paid for. Don't throw a hissy fit because something is not covered. Just make sure that you cover the costs where you need to. And if something's not clear about that in your itinerary along the way, just make sure you ask beforehand. I think it's part of the preparation, just to know what's covered and what's not covered. So that's my last don't. And I think that about covers everything I wanted to talk to. I have a long list of notes here that I put together yesterday, just thinking back and reminiscing about all the different press trips that I've been on. So I hope that was helpful for everyone. It was really fun chatting with you. Sham,
Yeah.
you kind of take it away.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Will. Very insightful talk. Guys, Will's gonna be with us for another few minutes, so if you have any questions, you can put them in the questions box below. Also, you can shoot out questions to Will on Twitter. His Twitter handle is @GoAwesomePlaces. You can include the hashtag Tripeasel there. And Will, I have one question for you. Assume I'm a starting off blogger, and I want to get my first press trip deal. How exactly would I go about approaching a tourism board in order to get this?
Yeah, so in terms of getting that maybe first press trip, a lot of it comes down to networking, I will say first. If there's an opportunity to locally network with PR, with these tourism boards that work in your city, I think that's the best way. And I'm constantly promoting Travel Massive because it's such a great organization. So in a lot of major cities around the world, there's something called Travel Massive. And the Travel Massive is a meeting of great minds, a meeting of great travel minds. A lot of bloggers come out to these events. A lot of people in the travel industry come out to events like that. And for me, it's been invaluable because you get to meet so many other people, gain experiences from other bloggers that are out there and learn how they've been successful, but as well meet people in these tourism boards that I've been talking about. Basically, just have a really good conversation with them, create a good relationship with these folks, and when the time is right, something could come up. Maybe they run an annual press trip. They'll think of you because you had a really awesome conversation about you loving, maybe you've always wanted to go to Germany, and they're thinking about you because you're a great fit, because you read a lot about food, and this year their theme is all about food. It's about being at the right place at the right time, and also being top of mind for a lot of these folks. And so if you do the proper networking offline, and I'll say also online, and so not just with Travel Massive and like travel meetups in your city, but if you do a good job of just having an honest conversation with these folks that work in these tourism boards, sending a friendly tweet, sending a friendly email, sending a friendly Facebook message or whatever works for you, I find Twitter probably works the best.
Okay.
Starting it from, hey, how's it going? I really had a great experience in Germany last year, and just talking about that, going from there as a tweet to maybe a direct message, and direct message maybe to email. That's kind of how things have progressed for me typically. That's kind of one way to do it. It's a very casual way of creating that relationship, and that goes back to just having really good networking skills. The next part is just pitching. Pitching is going to be a big part of what you do, and it's kind of like doing a cold call in sales, I guess, which is they haven't reached out to you, but you reach out to them to hopefully see if there's an opportunity for you to go out on a trip. And I find cold calling, doing pitches work better for for those self-organized trips. And so if you have a very specific thing in mind, you want to, you're going on a trip to California and you're going to be in LA for a couple days. You spend some time, you booked your flight, you have some of the details figured out, like your hotels, and you're talking to the California Tourism Board, and you want to see what they can do for you, or maybe you want to see a museum, you want to do this type of trip, you want to do this experience. You're trying to see if there's a way for them to organize something for you. Um, and so with pitching, the art of pitching, I have an article about this. I don't know if you guys know, but I also write for Travel Blog Breakthrough. And with Travel Blog Breakthrough, it's all about helping other travel bloggers along the way, kind of like what we're doing here. But I have the art of pitching, and it's really about writing a really good email, having a hook in the email, having a very not very complicated pitch, really getting down to the point. But at the end of the day, your pitch should have, what's in it for them, and then also what's going to be in it for you. It's really about that tit for tat. Being very clear about what you're able to offer them, why what you're offering is going to be awesome, and what you're going to get, and why it's going to be easy for them. And so in the pitch, just making it very clear, letting them know who you are. Stats, oftentimes, while kind of sucks that you have to rely on your social stats all the time, but it does matter just because that's what they're used to looking at and how they're benchmarking you against other people. So let them know what awesome stats you have on your social channels, your traffic, whatever it may be, what your niche is. And if you put together a compelling pitch, and I have examples of that on Travel Blog Breakthrough, there's no reason for them to say no. And I've talked to a lot of tourism brands, like the thing that they hate the most is that they get just terrible pitches. They just chuck them away. They'll never respond to you, which is probably why a lot of us don't get responses in. So don't get frustrated that you don't get an email back. All they want is a really good pitch, a pitch for them where they can just say, wow, like there's no reason not to sponsor this person on this trip. And it helps definitely, like I said, to have things in place already. That makes the decision a lot easier. If you're looking for like flight coverage, that's pretty much impossible for a lot of organized or self-organized press trips. For the organized ones, like my Quebec press trip, they covered that, which was really amazing. But obviously they had a lot of budget behind it, and it's planned out years, like a year in advance for these type of trips. So just make it easier for them. If there's things that you can say, I don't need a car rental, I don't need hotels. All you need is to put me in touch with like the zip lining tour operator, and maybe I want to do a hop on, hop off bus thing, and maybe I want this museum covered, and I want to do this restaurant. Just lay it all out there, and again, make it really easy for them. And this is also, that's probably the second way to get press trips. And I'd say that's probably the best way. Along the lines with networking, what you realize with PR companies, because a lot of PR companies will represent tourism boards, you start learning that if you get on their good side, if you get on their mailing list, that's pretty key. Mailing lists are great to be notified of like events that they run in your city, let's say, but also if they send out a blast to everyone on their list for a upcoming press trip and they're trying to see who's interested, if you're on that list, you'll be notified of things like that. If you're not going to know. So it's like kind of being as part of the inner circle, and it goes back to just good networking. If you're kind of a qualified, good blog candidate that they want to put on their list, then they will. So if you do a good job, you'll be put on the list.
Awesome.
So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you, Will. We don't have any questions coming in at the moment, so guys, feel free to shoot out your questions to Will on Twitter at the rate Go Awesome Places. And Will, just one last question before we sign off here. What is the one piece of advice that you can give to any blogger who's starting off today?
There's so many. I was in your spots, in a lot of your spots, not too long ago. I say 3 years. 3 years have gone by really, really quickly, but I've learned a lot along the way. If I could distill it down to one thing, is that just don't give up. it's gonna be a long road, I'll say, and you kind of need to be prepared that success isn't gonna come overnight. And I think a lot of travel bloggers will say the same thing. It's one, it's not as easy as people make it sound, and I'll be the first to tell you that. But it's really persistence and just continuing to write, continuing to kind of make the connections that you need to that will have great payoffs for you down the road. And so don't give up. And so if things don't really come your way initially, the first year, just continue to work because that hard work will pay off. And so don't give up. Just continuing to write amazing stuff and grow your audience, which is also key. There's so many things I could talk about right now, but
Awesome.
I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Will. So, take care, everybody. Have a good Sunday, what's left of it, and goodbye.
Yeah. Thanks for being on the call, guys. It was a pleasure.
Goodbye.
Take care.